Yeah.
So I can ask you who you are.
You can ask me who I am.
Who are you?
I'm Benjamin Holmes. I live in Nashville. I have a wife. I have 3 kids, ages 16, 10, and 3. As of August 1st, she'll be 3. And I have this company called Benjamin Holmes Counseling because I'm a marketing genius and I couldn't come up with anything any more creative than that at the time. It's a mental health group practice. We have 20-something therapists and everybody kind of does their own thing and sees who they want to see, including myself. And so kind of my niche wheelhouse is individuals who are dealing with some level of like depression, anxiety, a lot of imposter syndrome. And then here lately, which is where this podcast idea came up, was people just not understanding why they're not satisfied with their lives. And so I've developed over time this model or concept called the 8 domains. And so we live and exist in 8 different domains. And so it's very important to understand what it is we value for ourselves in those domains and then design investment strategies or disciplines that are behavioral and keep us congruent and in line with what we say we value for ourselves.
Love it.
Yeah. So who are you?
Oh, well, who am I? I'm Shannon Ripani. I'm a therapist here at Benjamin Holmes Counseling. I'm an attending therapist and I supervise 5 of the other therapists on staff. I've been here about a year now and I'm married. I've got 2 kids. They're 3 and 6. Moved here from Chicago, from India, very Midwest. Lived in Indiana, lived in Ohio. So I'm not from here. Don't have the accent, Midwest accent. Sound like I'm from nowhere. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
that's good.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. I've never done. I don't have any. I've never done stuff on camera before, so this is new.
Yeah, well, you're doing great.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, again, going back to like the 8 domains, and this is kind of an introduction. So, again, I developed it to try and help people articulate what it is that they value for themselves and how to invest in those values. So the 8 domains are this. We have the physical domain, which is how we want to experience ourselves as a physical body. We have the emotional mental domain, the spiritual or inspirational domain. There's the relational domain, which is every interaction you have with another human being that is not your romantic partner or spouse. Then you have your marital or romantic domain. And then there's the vocational, which is not necessarily what you do for money, but what you do for meaning. And oftentimes they can be the same thing, but they don't have to be. There's the financial domain, and then the recreational domain. And so the key question that we ask ourselves, and what we're going to be asking our guests as we go through more episodes, is how do you want to experience yourself in this domain, and how do you know you're experiencing yourself that way? And so the answer to that is going to be individual. I don't think anybody can tell another person that your values are right or wrong. Within, some limitations there, like murder, essay, things like that. And so, but almost universally, people find when they're working with me on the 8 domains that they're already investing in something. They just don't exactly know how to articulate that value. And so whenever they're out of sync with themselves or they're finding some level of dissatisfaction, when we're able to articulate the value, we're able to pinpoint and diagnose really quickly what area of your life do you need to focus on reorienting or recalibrating to get back into that balance with yourself.
Yeah, so it comes up pretty organically in sessions because people will be talking about discontent or they're depressed or their relationship's not going well. And so you bring the domains in and...
Yeah, I mean, I can't count the number of, and it's oftentimes like men who will reach out to me and I'll get the email in the inbox and it'll be like, yeah, I've never really tried therapy before, but I'm like 25, 26, I'm out of college, I got the job, I'm with the girl. And I just feel like my life isn't working the way that I thought it would. And that to me is kind of the classic email that indicates that we're going to be able to probably do some good work by focusing on 8 domains.
Cool.
Yeah.
What kind of, I don't know.
You don't have to ask a
Okay,
question.
all right. I'm trying to
You don't have to interview me.
Okay, I know.
Yeah. So
how does it work for you in your life? How do
I apply it?
Yeah. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about the different domains or how they apply to you?
Yeah. So one, I'll say like I'm by far not an expert and have not mastered, this striking this balance, but I think it's an ideal worth striving for. And so that's important, that I don't want, and we were talking about it earlier.
Self-actualized.
Yeah, I don't want this to be a podcast where we're pretending to have self-actualized and like have everything together. And the guests that we invite on in the future also are just going to be like people who just struggle and deal with regular old shit, and just like we do, and just like everybody else does. But I think it's a really good kind of way to guide ourselves towards continuing to show up for ourselves, care for ourselves. So anyways, the question being, how do I want to experience myself? And so in the physical domain, I have very basic values. I want freedom from preventable diseases. I want freedom from pain and lethargy. And I want freedom to move my body the way I want to move it for as long as I possibly can. And so the values are typically going to be consequences that I want to experience now and in the future. Okay. And so the investment strategies are simple. Like the one that I really make sure that I hit every single day is I need to move my body in a meaningful way every day. That could be a dance party with my daughter in the kitchen. That could be waking up, stretching for 30, 40 minutes. Most often for me, and I realize that I'm very fortunate to have a life that I've kind of arranged this way, but like I can most days go to the gym and lift, go to jujitsu 3 or 4 days a week, and still have like another day or two that I can run and stretch and things like that. So I know that not everybody, and maybe at some point in my life it will change and circumstances won't allow me that flexibility. But I can always find a way to move my body in a meaningful way every day. If it's taking a walk or, like I said, stretching in the morning or at night, that is kind of the minimum that I expect of myself every day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so with a little one, you can work that in. If you're just like, dancing around or running around.
Yeah, we went, so it's important to not be locked into like, I have to do these specific things in order to like meet my investment strategy into that value, because like we were at Zion a couple of weeks ago, and if my investment strategy was so rigid that I had to lift or I had to run or I had to go to jiu-jitsu, I would have failed that week because we were on vacation. And so the fact that my primary investment strategy is simply move your body in a meaningful way. Well, hiking. And, all of that stuff, we hiked the Narrows, we hiked up to Scouts Landing and then up the West Rim Trail in Zion. And we went to Bryce Canyon and hiked up a portion of like the Queen's Garden up this section called Wall Street, which is switchbacks. And I had Miriam on my back for most of it. And so that was kind of like an easy thing to like, not just do that without thinking of how significant of an investment that was. Like it wasn't just a hike. It was a hike. It was relational. It was a connection with my family. There was some spiritual, inspirational stuff that happened for me, just being out in nature and connecting with a sense of awe and wonder. But it was also an easy way for me to check the box and say, okay, you did that. You can feel good about that. You moved your body in a meaningful way.
Yeah, makes sense. I jotted some notes about the physical domain for me, and it was similar. I wrote that if it can check multiple boxes. And when I lived in Chicago, it did, because it was walking, like transportation was physical, walking places, taking the bike all year long, but now that I'm being out of a city, got to like build it in a little bit differently. But yeah, if it'll check a walk with a friend or hike with a friend, or I joined a trail running group because I moved here, didn't have any friends. You
do yoga too, right?
Yeah, I love in yoga, like in group setting. So I think that's also like that's a big spiritual box for me too, at the end, and just kind of just calm. I like hot yoga because that feels very like you're like held by I don't know, it feels like some extra, I don't know.
I've done hot yoga, hate it, but I respect anybody who can do it from that perspective. But it's, and I think we talked about this a while ago, but like it's an embodiment practice.
Mm-hmm.
And jiu-jitsu is a lot like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like whenever I go to jiu-jitsu or in the past when I've done yoga, I can't be anywhere else.
Oh yeah. That's
like
why I like
I have to be there.
Yeah.
And so that's where, like on Instagram, there's all these reels of people, and there's this background noise of all this white noise of voices and chatter, and it's loud. And then like they step on the jujitsu mats, and it all goes quiet. And that's really what it's like, is because I don't get to be anywhere else. Because if I am anywhere else in my mind or distracted, I'm going to get hurt, or I could hurt somebody else, or I'm just going to have a shitty time, like being smothered under people the whole time. So
the hot yoga does that actually for me, because the heat is the other thing that I think about. So if my mind were to like your mind can't really wander when you're trying not to pass out from being hot. So it's like there's so much mental energy goes to just like enduring the heat that it occupies like there's like minions, or there's like multiple thoughts going on up here, like a lot of energy is going towards just like enduring the heat, and then like feeling sweat. That's like a sensory thing too, where just like it's stimulating. It's like very like occupies, and you're more flexible when it's hot. And so that's crazy to like, it's hard for your mind to wander when you're like, oh, I didn't know my arm could bend. Like that is like more than it could the other, like 20 minutes ago before I got this hot. Now it's like, there's just a lot to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so it keeps me, that's like the most present I will be is, yoga. Sounds like same.
And
jiu-jitsu.
the only other experience that has ever gotten close to me for being mindful and embodied is trail running. And so.
Yeah, because you can't trip. If your mind wanders, you'll trip.
I don't know why, but every time I in the past, whenever my best friends lived here instead of moving to out west, but at night, we would go trail running at Percy on the Mossy Oak Trail, which is like around, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles. And we would do it at night with headlamps on in a line. Yeah. And looking back on that, I'm like, that sounds insane, because
that sounds fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
But again, like it was every single step. I had to be with every single placement of my foot, because otherwise... And I'm constantly just like, don't trip. But nothing else mattered.
Yeah, yep.
And so
I can run like 7 miles. Like I can run way more on a trail than I can pavement. I will get bored very fast, like pavement or any kind of like cement or a treadmill. It's not for me.
Not for you?
Yeah, I'll try, but it's not I need more going on. So like the fear of twisting your ankle works for me. So.
Should we now bring in that we've had our brains mapped and how that might play into?
Yes. So I have ADHD, and that's what I'm talking about pretty much. So I didn't know until I was in my early 30s, and then a lot started to make sense after that. So
how does that awareness of like, is it thrill seeking? Is it like adrenaline seeking, or is
stimulation?
It's just stimulating. It's stimulating. Yeah.
I need more in order to stay present. I describe it to clients as I have, like I said it a little bit earlier, but it's like I have 10 little minions or monkeys. I share like different things with people to say, like, it's like you have all these things going on, and it's like, it's not really a deficit of attention, it's an abundance of attention. And so you need to like occupy them so that they don't take you other places. And so that's why all through college I studied with music on, because then when I talk to folks with ADHD, they all understand. I'm like, it's like 3 of the little minion, monkey, whatever, like they're listening to the song and they're having fun, and then I have less to worry about, because like, whereas they otherwise might be like, get up and go do your laundry, go do that. They're like occupied. So I have to like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, because my Jamin, my 16-year-old, he can't do anything without having music on.
Yeah, I always have
music. Like if it's washing dishes, he's got his headphones on. If it's...
Because he's bored otherwise. It's like needs stimulation.
And so one of the things that, and this is a complete aside and a departure from the 8 domains talk, but that's okay, because this is our podcast. We can talk about what we want.
It's mental.
Yeah, but the brain map shows with you and with Jamin and like my other little guy, Rudy Mac, like a completely under aroused. Was yours under aroused?
Yeah.
So like which was kind of revelatory to me, but it made so much sense. And this is probably not news to anybody else who's been in mental health long enough to, know more about ADHD than I do, but it's an under-aroused brain. And so like you said, it's those parts of your brain are just constantly looking for entertainment, and the more entertainment you can give them, the more the ideal you or the self-led you can show up and say, shit, now it's time to do homework now that I've got all of these distracted by things.
Even like sitting in weird positions, like that's stimulating. So people with ADHD tend to sit in like weird positions, and we're like picking at things and moving things because we're just like kind of constantly seeking stimulation.
Jamin drums all the time and taps all the time. So anyways, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that.
Yes.
So when we talk about kind of getting back to 8 domains, and we talk about like the physical domain, when I was discussing like through my values, did any of that resonate with you, or did you come up with any of your own?
I think the just feeling good, like feeling, I don't have it as laid out as well and well articulated as you, but feel as I'm getting closer to 40, especially, like feeling well, feeling good, like being able to move, being able to toss my kids around. I think the bigger they get, like my 6-year-old now can fall asleep and I can almost barely pick her up if she falls asleep somewhere not in the bed. So a value of mine would be to be able to keep picking her up. So I should probably start lifting, eating more protein, those kinds of things. But being able to be active with my kids is a big value, to be able to not feel miserable all the time or to have like be too achy. So stretching and movement is really good for me, and just fun. I mean, to be able to, if I want to go kayaking, I want to be able to do it, and or I want to go on a hike, I want to be able to have experiences. That's probably my value.
When we were on this hike, this is on Bainbridge Island, and Jamin, right after I took this photo, Jamin turned around and he was like, "Dad, will you make me a promise?" And I'm like, "I'll try. What do you got, bud?" And Dad, if you happen to listen to this, this is not a knock on you, even though it's going to sound like it. But Jamin turned around and he was like, "Will you promise to do everything that you can to be able to do this with us for as long as possible?" And I'm like, "Yeah, where's that coming from?" He was just like, "It's just, I don't want you to end up like Papa." My dad is, 78 years old. And at that time he was around 75 or 76, but he was still like using a walker or having a hard time with stairs. And, contrast that with my in-laws who are like up at Mount Rainier right now, driving the country in their RV and visiting all these places and going down to water parks. And like my 70-something-year-old mother-in-law hiked that Wall Street's, she did this 3.5 mile hike with us at Bryce Canyon to where it was like switchbacks like crazy. And she did that, and so I think that is an important thing to understand about this as well, is like being able to hang with your kids, being able to hang with your grandkids, And so part of like, whether it's being dedicated to your investment strategies, really what we're talking about are behaviors that we decide are going to be disciplines, that we're going to invest in them because they not only serve us now, but they serve a version of us in the future that we also give a shit about. We care about that person that we are going to become 30, 40 years from now. And so in the book, The Science of Discipline, that was one of the things in the research that came out, is like, some of the most disciplined and successful people in the world they have in common that there's a future version of themselves that they're emotionally attached to. And so I thought that was really powerful, and I incorporated that into like the 8 domains of like, we're not talking about a set of goals when we talk about values. And we're definitely not talking about a set of goals when we talk about investment strategies. Because, as we meet goals and we make the point the destination, well, what do you do when you've reached that destination? You immediately experience a follow-up of dissatisfaction. And so then you have to set a new goal. And now you're at a deficit because I haven't reached that goal yet. And so investment strategies are not goals. These are just things that we do. They're things that we can do on a daily basis that don't require money. They don't require special equipment. They don't require really sometimes other people even to be involved. But they're, how do we want to experience ourselves and how do we get ourselves there in ways that, again, we can do easily and repeatedly throughout our lives. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's bad to have goals. I'm just saying that that's not what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that it's like inner child work, talking about your past self. So you're talking about like your future self. So and that's something that Matthew McConaughey said, right? The like, it's me 5 years from now, or me. Have you heard him?
Yeah, my hero is me 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Yeah.
So yeah, just thinking about you. And I ask clients, therapy clients that all the time. When they're in a relationship they're struggling with, they don't know if they want to be in it. Ask them, well, do you want her to be in it or do you want him to be, 1 to 5 years from now? Is this what's happening now? If this were still happening in 5 years, is that what you want?
That's a hard question.
Yeah. Yeah. They kind of struggle with it. Some of the people I work with, they're like, because they like what they know what they know and they like what they like right now. But then you're not just doing what you're doing for you now. You're doing, or especially, women that I'm working with that might want to have kids one day and they're in a relationship that might be toxic. And so I might ask them that if I already know, if they've already shared with me, in 5 years, I think I want to be married, I want to have kids. And then, so to ask them, is that your kid's dad? Is that him, you think? Or, because if it's not, he might be somewhere else and maybe you should think about maybe that will help you get out of it. Like, you're not getting out of it. If you can't get out of a bad relationship for you, what about like the future you? So, because it's like self-compassion, we're nicer to other people than we are to ourselves. So it's like, maybe we can be nice. If you can't be like in line with your current values, what about your future? And it sometimes kind of helps people step back. Yeah. And do things they might not want to do.
Have you done any of the aging filters on like TikTok or Instagram or whatever?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I look like my mom.
Like with AI, I think it's becoming easier because you could just pull up a filter and be like, there's my 65-year-old self. Yeah. Screenshot a picture of him and I got to show up for that guy. Yeah. But before AI and even without AI, I thought of that, that we could do that. But what I do with clients is I have them to try and go in and imagine a future version of themselves. Mm-hmm. What does that person look like? Mm-hmm. What are they capable of doing? What do they like spending their time doing? Who do they like spending their time doing that with? Mm-hmm. How do they feel about themselves? Yeah. And that is the version of you that you're showing up for now. The consequences that person is going to experience are a direct result of the decisions you're making today. And that is why I think this work is so important, is because everyone talks about how life is so short. Like, don't spend your life in a toxic relationship because life is so short. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, life is really fucking long too for most of us. Yeah. It's like 70, 80, 85 years. Yeah. That is a really long time to be locked into a miserable experience that you could have changed 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. By just like going for a walk or by putting $5 in your savings account every month, like whatever you're
like
capable.
Just little things that add up and compound over time. So
makes sense. Yeah. So what are the other domains you got?
So you have your emotional, mental, the spiritual, inspirational, relational. Again, everybody but your romantic partner. Then you have the romantic or marital if you're married. The vocational, the financial, and recreational. Okay. And so some of these are easier for me to like lay out and talk about because to be frank with you, like over the last 2 years, I've spent a lot more time focused on my physical domain as the company has gotten bigger and more of my time has like been freed up, which is actually my time is my greatest like asset right now. It's the one that I appreciate the most. And so using my time to like, lift for the first time consistently in my whole life. Like I used to run, I've done jujitsu on and off for years and years, but like do jujitsu consistently for the last couple of years after doing it for a couple of years, taking a break, doing it for another couple of years, taking a break. And so, so like when we talk about the emotional mental domain, I got some things, but like that one's I'm still working that one out. But again, to talk about it doesn't mean that I've mastered it in any way. But where I'm at with that right now is like, I value experiencing myself as someone who knows myself. Same, I value experiencing myself as someone who is not surprised by myself. Yeah. Because in the past, I've definitely done things after the fact, I'm like, what the fuck was that? Like, what were you thinking? And I still have those moments, but I value the experience that I have with myself so much that like I can kind of see emotions coming and I know what their behavioral referent is, and I can decide.
Yeah.
I can have agency over how I respond to those emotions.
Yep.
And I can tell you that is exponentially easier to do in every other context than my marriage. And so that's definitely like one thing that we talk about in the marital domain of like, how do I want to experience myself? It's a lot of the same like emotional mental stuff that I know that there's a lot of room for growth in.
Well, yeah, our marriage therapist guru here, Jenny, says we're not always showing up as our best selves in the marriage, because that's where we feel most secure in a lot of ways. So that's where all the bad stuff can come out. And, I wrote a similar thing to you in the emotional domain of like accepting my emotions and forgiving myself. If I probably don't seem like this, but I have a short fuse, at least in my I
can't wait to see that.
It's a very ADHD
I hope
thing.
I'm gonna over time.
It'll take a lot. It'll take a lot because I've worked on it, and because you're my boss, so I'm not going to have things to lose if I go off on you. But I definitely, when I lived in Chicago and walking around and seeing things, I could get a little like, she doesn't want to talk to you, man. Like I can kind of puff up. And
I remember you.
Kind of
crazy. Can I share a story that you shared about like?
Yeah. Oh, the two giant guys.
Like picking a fight.
Yeah, my husband's just like, oh man, don't worry about her. She's this. And then after I was like, what do you mean don't worry about me? What are you talking about? And he was like, they're huge. Why are you doing this right now? I think because he said the guy was trying to get my attention, and I was like, I kind of two drunk big guys, and I had a bike, and I was just like trying to leave and he went like this, and I was like, said something like, oh, so am I a dog? Do I look like, are you calling me? Am I a pet for you to, or something like that? And then he got out, and my husband was like, whoa. But yeah, I don't remember. But being in control of my emotions. So now like recognizing if I feel like anger or frustration or like righteous anger, like that's wrong. You can't do that. Like recognizing it, and you got being more in control. So like picking and choosing when I like, oh, you two are giant and drunk. I shouldn't. Maybe this isn't the right moment to let that out. And so just Michael's regulating emotions and accepting my emotions, knowing I am not my emotions. So if I'm like internal family system stuff of like, our emotions are just a part of us. They're not the whole of us. It's just like, and emotions are information. So they're not necessarily like, you don't have to believe them all the time. Maybe I'm just hungry, like maybe I'm not, maybe that person, I do an improv class now. And one of the days I was there, I was thinking, oh, they don't want to be my scene partner. And then I had to think for a second that might not be true at all. They could have just been thinking about something else. So like not believing everything I think. And just like,
having curiosities over conclusions or curiosities before conclusions. My friend, his therapist described emotions as like lights on a dashboard. And when we can see them as being useful, then we can have a different relationship to them. So like if I'm driving a car, I'm driving a car and the check engine light comes on, I can have one reaction or another one. I can be like, shit, now I got to take it in, and that's going to cost it. And I can go ahead and like pregame all this suffering, or I can check in with that light, take it, get it diagnosed, and maybe it's just a sensor. Maybe it just is a fuse, or maybe it is a problem. Yeah. But it's a gift to receive that information because that is an indication that I need to check in with myself. And so like that using emotions as information is definitely a big part of the emotional mental domain or the value set for me as well of like, I don't need to just automatically agree with the energy of this emotion, but I can be curious about it, check in with it. And if it needs something from me, great. Or if it's a false alarm, maybe it's actually not a thing. It's old stuff that I just haven't dealt with. That really has nothing to do with right now.
Yeah. I think that seemed like not getting picked for a scene partner or something. That was probably like a middle school version of me that like wasn't asked to the dance or something that got triggered. So, to think it's like, no, that all that happened. And our thoughts go so much faster than we realize, how you can like drop something. And in the time you take for it to hit the ground, you've already thought, oh, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I have to clean the carpet now. Like I broke my favorite mug and it hadn't even hit the ground yet. And so like realizing that has been helpful to me as an ADHD brain, but just in general, our thoughts go so fast. So to think, oh, I just wrote a whole entire story about that person doesn't want to be my scene partner because they like hesitated when we were walking around and they didn't walk towards me right away, but really they're probably it's probably none of that. And even if it is, oh, well, it actually doesn't have anything to do with me. Like maybe they just wanted to work with somebody else. So it doesn't have to be, not believe all of the little signals.
Yeah. So how do you invest then? How, I mean. Therapy for sure.
All the books I read for clients, I'm also reading for me, and podcasts I listen to.
Audible is a godsend for someone like me who doesn't sit long enough to read a book.
Yeah, I say read, but I mean Audible. Yeah.
You mean Audible?
Spotify Premium, listening. My 30-minute, 40-minute drive. I'm listening to books. I invest that way. How else do I invest in my mental, emotional? Yeah, I think talking, like my closest friends are a lot of them in the mental health profession or just that are interested in it, or they're like surrounding myself with people who are into understanding how their brains, like just understanding themselves. So like, not being around people that are taking from me too much. I'm a lot more selective than I was in my 20s about that. You're a nice person and this is, we can be friendly, but I don't want to go. I was friends with every and anybody all the time. But then would find myself in friendships where I didn't really enjoy it, and I wasn't. So now I'm just more selective I'm less quick to say, "Do you want to hang out?" Like less golden retriever energy with friends. It's more just like, "Oh, thank you." Like this is nice, but especially when you tell me you're a therapist, and then you get a feeling of like, "Oh, you're gonna want to." Use that to, you just lie. So, like on the plane or something, you're just like, oh, I'm in, education or something. That's how I don't know if that's how I invest, I think. So,
well, I don't want to I don't want us to go through like all of the 8 domains because we need to have content for future episodes.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good start.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
So
good deal.
Stay tuned for more.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Because this is good. This is the stuff.
You want debate.
So the conversation right now is the pop psychology, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You got to love yourself before you can love someone else. And I say yes, and you say no.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
And so then you said, what is to say that like,
why can't you just why can't you just like yourself and be committed to learning and growing and committed to learning how to love yourself? Like, are people with depression who aren't loving themselves not allowed to find love? Do they have to sit and wait until they figure out their depression and then they can go out there? Then they're like whole and good enough. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So I see it's a good enough, like, if I'm flawed, if I'm struggling, and if there's evidence of that in my behavior, maybe I'm not taking care of my body or I'm not connecting with people as much, that like, does that mean that I'm not as worthy of love?
Yeah.
But that's not how I think of that.
How do you think of it?
I think of part of loving someone is accepting them exactly as they are right now and not requiring them to fit in, but allowing them to belong as is. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that the quality of my ability to love other people comes far greater in like magnitude and quality whenever I'm not demanding that I'm like performing or behaving a certain way, but whenever I also I have to express compassion and acceptance to myself first before I really can genuinely offer that to anyone else.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree. I guess
So that's what I thought of, like,
Yeah.
whenever, okay, I got to love myself before I can love someone else. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not loving myself, and my definition of love is like unconditional positive regard and acceptance for where I am right now and just letting me be who I am, it's hard for me to not view other people in a judgmental or demanding way if I'm not extending that to myself first.
Yeah. I think I'm thinking of it as like, say there was a breakup or something, and somebody was like, well, I need to spend some time learning how to love myself before I can get in a relationship again. And I don't love that, because
I don't love
feel
that
like
either.
You don't? Okay. Because I feel like it's like you're allowed to, I just think loving yourself it's a high standard, because a lot of it's also fluctuates. You're allowed to, some days you'll love yourself, and some days you just like are kind of okay with yourself, and some days you like can't stand yourself, and accepting all of those things, not setting a standard of like, I need to reach this pinnacle, I need to like fully love and accept myself before I seek a relationship. Because relationships also can help you love yourself. If you find a relationship with a person that loves you and you love them, and you're committed to both growing individually and taking care of your own selves, not like relying on them to meet all of your needs, like, and you have lives outside of the relationship, I feel like then you can like grow together.
Yeah. So you're a mom. You're a great mom.
Oh, thank you.
You love your kids. I know that.
Yeah.
You don't like them every day.
No.
In some moments, you can't even stand them. That doesn't mean that you don't love them.
Okay. All right. So you're saying deep.
It's a deeper commitment to accepting and not abandoning and showing up for that individual. And so that's what I'm talking about with like that unconditional positive regard, that like I matter, I'm important. I may not like what I've done. I might not like how I feel. But I'm the only me that I get to be. And so I'm committed to that. And I'm committed to accepting that I don't have to feel good about that all the time to still love me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that is a much lower standard or barrier of entry into like loving yourself, when you understand it doesn't have to be a feeling of fondness for myself moment to moment. Yeah,
that makes sense. I think, as long as people have a flexible definition of it, and it's not, because I think we're wired for love, built for relationship, we do best in community. And so I think the part of it I hate when it's like, you need to love yourself first. It's like if it holds people back from putting themselves out there, because they're like, oh, I haven't done enough work on myself. I don't love myself enough yet. I'm not ready to even begin.
That doesn't change their worthiness of being loved.
Yeah.
Like if I haven't done the work, I agree with you if that's like, you got to love yourself before you can love anybody else, meaning I'm not worthy of loving someone else until I have perfected loving myself.
Yeah.
I don't think it speaks to worth or what we deserve. I think it speaks to like maybe what we have a capacity for.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go into like...
that makes sense.
I think it's like Dan Siegel's model of secure attachment of like safety, seeing and soothing. Like that's how I learned from my parents based off of, did they keep me safe? If they did, then I can move on to them understanding me, seeing me, being curious about me, learning what my needs are, learning what my likes are, learning what I was scared of, learning what set me off, and then they can anticipate and get out ahead, and they can learn how to soothe me. And the degree to which my parents model that safety, seeing, and soothing for me as a child imprints on me my kind of like template for how well I do that for myself as an adult. If my parents fuck that up or maybe they didn't fuck it up, but like just shit happens and that was disrupted in some way, or somebody else interjected in an experience that overwhelmed me, therefore overrode their messaging as parents, like trauma does, that doesn't change that I still deserve to be safe, seen, and soothed. And it doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to access that from other people. It just may mean that like I need to do some work on myself to figure out how to unwrite whatever that other messaging was that got in the way of that secure attachment being possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's not a you're saying you can heal in relationship, but the foundational, so maybe it's like that you need to accept yourself before you can, or you need to know your just basic self.
I think it's important to be comfortable with yourself, but not like
I'm the greatest person ever,
right.
and everything's fine with me. I have no room to grow.
Because I do believe that there are certain things that we don't access about ourselves until we are in an intimate relationship with another person. We just, like that, and I actually discourage, when you said, like, I need to work on myself before I get into another relationship.
No, get back out there.
No, you don't, because you can't access certain parts of yourself because only an intimate partner can trigger that shit in you, and then you deal with it. And hopefully you got somebody who understands that that's the process and they're committed to that. And
as long as they're going to it mindfully. So like if you're going out to bars or places and you're crying, maybe it is not. Maybe you're not ready. Like maybe go back. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed by the idea of meeting people, but if you can be with yourself and take yourself out to places and meet other people, even friendships that are healing, then you don't have to sit around and wait or shame yourself. Because I feel like a lot of people shame themselves for, I'm hooked on relationships. I can't be alone. And it's like we're supposed to be with people, like in community. I think we do best.
We're social creatures.
Yeah, we're not. You don't need to sit alone and wait till you feel some like, I've reached this. I love myself enough. I can go find,
Right.
You can just be discerning.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't think that we have to love ourselves enough.
Yeah, it's not an enough thing.
What's the measurement of that? Right? But I do think, and my experience has been, the better I am with myself,
the better you can show
the
up.
more I see my own shadow, the more I know my own parts, and I know how my protectors show up in the world and interact with other people's protectors, the more I'm comfortable with my own, those sides of me, the better I can be with other people's.
Yeah, agreed.
And the more grace and patience and kindness and acceptance I can extend to other people.
For sure. Agreed.
All right, you ready to get into some bullshit?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. This is the first one that I ever saw. Let me pull it up here.
What about trauma? Essentially, you're finding an excuse for the way you are, which you yourself don't like. See, if something unpleasant happened to you, you have two choices. Either you can become wise, or you can become wounded. Choose. More unpleasant things happen to you than anybody else. You must be the wisest man soonest. No, you choose to be wounded because you carry this wound like a badge, and so that you can cause the same wound to others. What's the point? When you know the pain of it, how do you do the same thing to me?
I like, and by that I mean strongly dislike, how he immediately goes from the word trauma to unpleasant experiences.
Oh, yeah. It's a little victim blamey, a little minimizing.
It's a huge minimization.
Yeah. I don't know that he knows what trauma is.
I'm not sure he knows what trauma is either, because when he talks about, like, you use it as an excuse to explain how you are. Or excuse how you are. I'm not exactly sure, because the moment I heard him say trauma are unpleasant experiences, I was like, oh, this is bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
In your experience as an EMDR therapist, with the clients that you treat for their trauma with EMDR, are we talking about like they, like got a flat tire on the way to Disney World, or they stubbed their toe in the morning when they got out of bed, or the dog crapped on the carpet, or, they didn't get that Christmas bonus that they were hoping for. These unpleasant experiences have traumatized them.
Yeah, no, we're definitely, I define it, the definition I like the most of trauma is anything. The traumatic event is the thing that happens, and the trauma is what happens in you when you are left feeling separated from yourself. So you thought it could be something as unpleasant as like bullying, but to a little kid, that was my friend, and now they're bullying me, so I actually have no idea what a friend is, and then that stays with them. And so, it's not, those are not yeah, those are just annoyances you're describing, like
Right.
little inconveniences. But no, trauma is like separates you from who you are, your view of the world, your view of friendship, I thought my parents loved me, and then you find out, I mean, anything, whatever it is that causes a separation.
Yeah.
And leaves you, in EMDR we look at negative core beliefs, so anything that leaves you feeling like I'm not safe, I can't feel my feelings, I can't trust people, I can't trust my own judgment, all those kinds of things. So yeah, not just unpleasant experiences or whatever he said.
I like to say,
And also most traumatized people don't want to even admit that it was trauma. They actually do the opposite, where they're like, no, it wasn't that bad. I'm like, it sounded kind of bad.
and he brings up that like you wear that as a badge of honor, and then you like so that you can go do that to other people.
Yeah.
And no, like most of the people
They
that I've worked with
don't
are
recognize
traumatized.
that it's trauma. Yeah.
Well, they don't recognize that it's trauma, but they recognize that like I'm hurting people and I don't want to hurt people. Like, so that's usually what brings people into therapy. In my experience of working with trauma victims or survivors, is that the people in their lives are saying like, you can't treat us this way, or we can't watch you do this to yourself, right? And so they don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
But again, there's this overriding of the programming that we operate from. So I like to say that everything that happens to a child and around a child is interpreted by the child to mean something about the child. So they're taking everything that is happening in their environment, by their parents, by the stuff they see on TV or the stuff they see on the phone or the interactions with siblings or nannies or caregivers or whatever, and they're deciding, what does this mean about me? And primarily, am I safe?
It's black and white, good or bad. Like,
and if I am
am I
not
good or
safe,
am I bad?
I am bad.
Yeah.
Things are not good, so therefore they are bad.
That's why kids excuse parents' bad behavior. They say, well, they hit me, but, I must have done something bad because it's better for me to be bad than they can't be bad.
Right.
Because if they're bad, I am scared.
Right.
So I'd rather just believe I'm bad.
Yes.
And then they grow up into adults being like, why do I not feel good enough? And why?
Am I always preoccupied with trying to please other people and make other people feel safe for me?
But they don't even recognize it. Even the most obvious trauma.
So one of the things that I absolutely I dislike about things like that on social media is that somebody's going to see that and they're going to take this like, well, just grab my bootstraps and pull them up harder, and that might be a discouragement from someone who really needs to be in EMDR, or someone who needs to be seeing a brain spotting therapist, or just a trauma-focused therapist in general, to get in there and to talk about that narrative of what happened to you, process how that on a biological level changed you, right? So one of the taglines to a good book on trauma is how your biography becomes your biology.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like a meta study of the ACE study. It's called Childhood Disrupted, how your biography becomes your biology. And so we know that certain traumatic experiences can change a person at the level of their DNA. And so that rises well above like an unpleasant experience that you just want to be in a bad mood about.
Yeah.
Which is what I was kind of getting from that.
He was giving that. Yeah. It's using it as an excuse for bad behavior, but it's not an excuse, but it might be an explanation. If you can identify core wounds and attachment wounds and things that that happen to you, and that can help you explain, why not get curious about it? He's kind of saying more like, it's not an excuse, so it shouldn't matter as much, like not kind of discouraging exploration in a way.
Super discouraging. So
Not good.
we agree it's bullshit?
Yes, we agree. It's
bullshit.
Okay. Is he famous? Who is that guy?
The guy not saying the stupid shit is pretty famous as a podcaster.
Oh, he's going to come for us.
He's not going to come for us because I guarantee he never sees our podcast.
Okay, that's true. We're nobody.
We're nobodies.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Okay.